The HOA built a fence around John's ranch and took away his only gate key. They hoped he would sell his land. But John discovered he owned the property where their water system was built. He used this to get his key back and teach the HOA a lesson. Before watching full video, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. I've lived on my 30-acre ranch at the edge of Pinewood Valley for nearly 20 years. My grandfather left it to me and I've maintained it just as he would have wanted. I raise a small herd of cattle, grow vegetables, and enjoy the peace and quiet away from city life. It's not a fancy place, but it's mine and I've always taken pride in it. My trouble began 3 years ago when a real estate developer bought the large property next to mine. They built an upscale housing community called Sunset Ridge Estates, with homes starting at $750,000. I didn't mind at first. It's not my business what others do with their land, and I figured we could all coexist peacefully. Soon after the first 10 houses were completed, they formed a homeowners association, HOA. A woman named Karen Williams was elected as the president. She drove a luxury SUV and always looked at my ranch with disdain whenever she passed by. One morning in April, I woke up to the sound of construction. I walked outside to find workers installing metal fence posts along my property line. A tall man in a hard hat approached me. "Morning, sir. We're installing the new security fence for Sunset Ridge Estates." "Along my property line?" I asked, confused. "Yes, sir. The HOA has approved a full perimeter fence for the community." I immediately called Karen Williams. "Mr. Roberts," she said with a condescending tone, "the fence is completely legal. Our survey shows it's on our property, just inside the boundary line. Our residents deserve security and protection from agricultural activities." She said, agricultural activities, like it was a dirty word. I checked the survey myself and consulted my lawyer. Unfortunately, they were right. The fence was just inside their property line. While I didn't like it, there wasn't much I could do legally. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched as they built an 8-foot metal fence all around their community, including along my entire eastern boundary. It was an eyesore, but I tried to ignore it. The real problem started a month later. My ranch had an old dirt access road on the east side that I'd used for decades to move equipment and transport cattle to the community grazing field we shared with other local farmers. This road was now blocked by the new fence. I called Karen again. "We've installed a gate at the access point," she explained. "But for security reasons, only HOA residents will have keys." "That's my access road," I protested. "I've been using it for 20 years. According to our records, the road is on Sunset Ridge property. You'll need to find another way to move your animals." Her voice dripped with disgust at the mention of my cattle. I spoke with my lawyer again, who looked into the property records. It turned out the access road was indeed on their property, but I had been using it long enough that I might have a case for an easement claim. However, fighting it would cost thousands in legal fees and the process could take years. In the meantime, I had to take a 5-mile detour to reach the community grazing land, which added 2 hours to my workday. My fuel costs increased and the longer route stressed my cattle. The HOA knew exactly what they were doing, making life difficult for the unsightly ranch next door, hoping I'd eventually sell. Over the next 6 months, things escalated. The HOA started filing complaints against me with the county. My tractor was too noisy, even though I only used it during normal working hours. And my cattle created offensive odors, despite being a quarter-mile from the nearest Sunset Ridge home. And my barn needed repainting, even though it was perfectly functional. I received a notice that the HOA was planning to build a second fence, this time with concrete panels, creating a buffer zone between their community and my ranch. This would make it even harder for me to access the eastern side of my property. Then I discovered they had diverted water from the creek that ran through both our properties, affecting my irrigation system. When I confronted Karen about it, she simply said, "We needed to improve our community pond. If you can't afford proper irrigation, perhaps ranching isn't for you anymore." It became clear they were trying to force me out. Several residents approached me with lowball offers for my land, mentioning how difficult it must be to maintain such a large property at my age. I'm only 52. One evening, I was reviewing old property documents my grandfather had kept in a trunk in the attic. I was looking for anything that might help my easement claim for the access road. That's when I found something interesting. Among the yellowed papers was a deed for a small plot of land, just half an acre, located in what was now the middle of Sunset Ridge Estates. According to the document, my grandfather had purchased this odd little parcel in 1965 from the original landowner. It had never been included in the sale to the developers because it was under a separate deed that no one had noticed. I took the document to my lawyer, who confirmed its validity. The half-acre plot was indeed still legally mine. It had been overlooked in all the property surveys because it was recorded separately from the main ranch property. The most interesting part? This small parcel contained the main pump house that controlled water distribution for the entire Sunset Ridge estates. Even better, it was also where they had built the security building that housed their gate control system and the only copy of the master key to all community entrances, including my blocked access road. Instead of immediately revealing what I'd found, I decided to be strategic. I had my lawyer quietly confirm the property boundaries and update all official records to reflect my ownership of the parcel. We did this without notifying the HOA. Next, I researched the HOA bylaws and regulations which were publicly filed. I discovered that their water system approval was contingent on having proper access to the pump house for maintenance. More importantly, their insurance policy required that the security building remain under the HOA's direct control. I also learned that Karen Williams, the HOA president, had been cutting corners. The security building had been built without proper permits, and the water system modifications affecting my creek had never been approved by the county water board. Armed with this information, I prepared for a confrontation. But first I made one more move. I created a new company called Eastern Access Properties LLC, and transferred ownership of the half-acre parcel to this company, with me as the sole owner. This would give me additional legal protection. The confrontation. I waited until the next HOA meeting, which was held in their fancy clubhouse. I arrived dressed in my best clothes, not my usual work attire. As expected, Karen immediately addressed me. "Mr. Roberts, this meeting is for Sunset Ridge residents only," she said loudly. "Actually," I replied calmly, "I'm here as the owner of property within Sunset Ridge Estates." A confused murmur spread through the room. I handed out copies of the property deed and the updated county records to each board member. "This document confirms that I, or rather my company Eastern Access Properties LLC, owns the half-acre parcel where your pump house and security building are located." The color drained from Karen's face as she reviewed the documents. "This is impossible," she stammered. "Our surveys were incomplete," I finished for her. "And now we need to discuss terms for your continued use of my property." The room erupted in chaos. Some residents started shouting, while others frantically called the HOA's lawyer. Karen tried to regain control of the meeting, but it was too late. After 2 weeks of legal discussions, the HOA's lawyers confirmed what mine had already told me. The half-acre was legally mine. The HOA had built structures on my property without permission. I could have demanded they remove everything, but that wasn't my goal. Instead, I proposed a simple agreement. 1. The HOA would provide me with full, unrestricted access to my original East Side Road, including multiple gate keys. 2. They would remove all complaints filed against my ranch and agree in writing never to file frivolous complaints again. 3. They would restore the creek water flow to its original state. 4. In exchange, I would grant them an easement to maintain their pump house and security building on my property, for a nominal fee of $1 per year. The HOA board, facing potential lawsuits from their own residents if they lost access to water, had no choice but to agree. Karen Williams, however, wasn't willing to compromise. "We will fight this in court," she declared at the emergency HOA meeting called to discuss my proposal. That's when I revealed my final card. "Before you decide," I said, addressing the residents directly, "you should know that your security building was built without proper permits. Additionally, the water diversion from my creek was never approved by the county water board." I let that sink in before continuing. "If we go to court, not only will you lose access to your water system during the legal battle, but the county might impose significant fines for these violations. I'm offering a simple solution that allows everyone to move forward." The vote was overwhelmingly in favor of accepting my proposal. Karen Williams was forced to resign as HOA president, replaced by a more reasonable neighbor named Michael Chin, who had always been friendly to me. Within a week, I had keys to the gate on my access road. The creek was restored to its natural flow, and all complaints against my ranch were withdrawn. The new HOA board also agreed to replace the metal fence along my property with a more attractive wooden one that blended better with the natural surroundings. As a gesture of goodwill, I offered to supply the community with fresh vegetables from my garden and to host an annual barbecue where residents could learn about sustainable farming practices. Many of the newer residents, I discovered, were actually interested in local agriculture and had been misled by Karen about the nuisance my ranch supposedly caused. 2 years have passed since then. The relationship between my ranch and Sunset Ridge Estates has completely transformed. Several families bring their children to visit my cattle on weekends, and I've started a small educational program about ranching for interested residents. The irony isn't lost on me that the HOA's attempt to isolate and remove me ended up creating a stronger community connection. The fence they built to keep me out now has 3 gates with my keys, and residents often walk over to buy fresh eggs or produce directly from my small farm stand. Karen Williams sold her house and moved away 6 months after losing her position. I heard she joined another HOA in a gated community across town. As for me, I've been invited to join the Sunset Ridge Advisory Board to help create more sustainable practices for the community. Sometimes I sit on my porch in the evening and look at the fence that was meant to push me away. It reminds me of my grandfather's wisdom: always know your land down to the last inch, because that knowledge might save you someday. He was right in ways I never could have imagined.